Vinland Saga Season 2 is one of the most anticipated of 2023. So here is your no-nonsense recap of Vinland Saga Season 1. As always, if I miss anything, let me know in the comments, and of course, murder the subscribe button because it killed your family and you're out for revenge. Also, Thorkel's kinda behind you. 15 years ago, the warrior Thors is seen leaving the battlefield. This man is a Viking. The name Viking came from the Scandinavians themselves, from the Old Norse word vik, meaning bay or creek, which formed the root of Vikinger. In other words, ancient pirates. Thors decided to leave the battle to lead and pursue a peaceful life with his wife Helga to raise his daughter Ylva, and years later, his youngest, his son, Thorfinn. Longing for a great adventure like his father, he looks up to, his mind is filled with wonder of a land filled with nothing but vast fields of green from Leif Erikson, Vinland. However, one night, a slave breaks free from his owner and drags himself through the cold and harsh snow to freedom, to the doorstep of Thors' home. Taking in the slave, the next day they are visited by the slave's owner, Halfdan. Obviously, looking for his slave, knowing he must likely have come to this village, he begins to question. However, Thors is a changed man from his Viking days as he instead buys the slave for a much higher price than what he would otherwise be worth, only for him to die the same night. Thorfinn, witnessing this, only sees his father as someone larger than life. Someone who he would give anything to be like. Thors was Thorfinn's hero. While this happens, the war machine keeps raging on as England and Denmark are locked in an intense back and forth, and the Vikings are eager for more men in a war they are losing. Loki, the leader of a band of Yam's Vikings, seeks out Thors. He was not allowed to escape battle, and since he departed the war front, it was either be killed where he stands or join his former Vikings in war. The former troll of Yam decides to join them to spare his village and family being massacred by Vikings. However, the Yam's Vikings re-enlist Thors and as well some of the villagers who are excited for war, not realizing really what war means or any of this. While this is happening, Floki goes to the Viking Askeladd, which they then plot to kill Thors, along with the villagers who join them there, not being spared for his desertion 15 years ago, as per the rules. Setting sail to their inevitable doom, or rather, they think, as Thors plans to simply ditch them as to not subject them to any war. This is imperative, as while at sea, Thors finds his young son Thorfinn stowed away in the ship. Angry, initially, Thors enjoys his time with his son as he knows this likely will be his last. Then, stopping to resupply, they are led into a trap by the Yam's Viking leader, Floki. Thors then faces off against the Yam's Viking alone, even taking on an enraged Bjorn who is under the influence of a mushroom, which makes him go berserk. Surprisingly, Thors is very capable, only incapacitating his enemies, not killing them. He even defeats an enraged Bjorn in surprising fashion until he finally makes his way to the dastardly Askeladd. While experienced and a fierce foe himself, the man called Askeladd is no match for the troll of Yam. But Askeladd doesn't play clean. He was paid to do a job, not to honor a duel. Askeladd orders his men to fire a volley of arrows into Thors' body as the men of the village, and most importantly, his son, witnesses. Holding his son in his arms as he bleeds to death, he tells Leif Erikson to bring his head to Sigvaldi, the leader of the Yam's Vikings. Otherwise, they will suspect he ignored the summons and destroy his home village anyways. In a heartbreaking moment, the great troll of Yam is no more. Later, breaking away, Thorfinn vows revenge and boards one of Askeladd's ships, and he promises to one day murder Askeladd, even if it's the last thing he'll ever do. As they land in England, the Vikings brutally pillage a village, and in the night when Thorfinn could have easily killed Askeladd, he fails to do so, because he couldn't do it. So Thorfinn goes into the woods to train and instead challenges Askeladd to, of all things, a duel. While defeated time and time again, Askeladd realizes that he could use him in their group if trained and experienced enough. So, he agrees to keep fighting him in duels, sort of as a way to test him, and use him as a pawn. Continuing to follow along, Thorfinn is shocked at how savage these men are, though for Askeladd, it's all business as usual as he makes a deal with the Danish to join their side of the war. Now, the Vikings are mercenaries. Slaughtering their enemy later that night, Thorfinn in the battle is saved by Askeladd when nearly being killed by an enemy swordsman. Though, as the battle progresses, Thorfinn brandishes the blades his father used and kills his first man. Sealing his fate, Thorfinn would eventually join Askeladd's band of Vikings, and for years they would continue to hone his skills in battle, eventually facing off countless times with Askeladd in duels. So much so that his band of Vikings come to look forward to these duels. Though, as time continues to progress, Thorfinn finds himself in battle once more, and, like many times prior, is injured. Though what makes this different is that an English family, a mother and a daughter, rescue and tend to Thorfinn's injuries. In a way, sort of taming the beast that is Thorfinn's heart, even if for a moment. Though, this would all end when Askeladd's men would land after given the signal by Thorfinn and raid and pillage the village. All the while, once again, Thorfinn realizes what his actions have just caused. However, as King Sweyn withdraws from England, the invasion of England is officially on hold, and so seeking jobs and contracts, Askeladd goes to France. There, Askeladd uses Thorfinn for an important role, to negotiate with the leader of the French army, Jabeath. Their new job is to simply defend the French fort from attack, which they are indeed successful in thanks to Askeladd. Fooling the French, I could make a joke here about the French, but I won't. They loot their fort of treasure and make haste, fooling the Jabeath, and in turn promising Thorfinn another duel with Askeladd. Now with more capital, Askeladd makes his way to Yorm's village, demanding his men drink for their job well done, and more importantly, granting Thorfinn his one duel. Once again, Thorfinn is defeated. This time, Askeladd does so by making Thorfinn angry, causing his attacks to be reckless, and thus easy to read, defeating the young lad. Choosing to stay on the ship that night while his comrades celebrate, Thorfinn talks with a Yorm's slave, Hordaland, the former daughter of a lord that was defeated and thus was sold into slavery. The two have quite an interesting conversation where, as he feasts on the plate that she was ordered to send him, asks if he is a thrall for Askeladd. However, Thorfinn replies that he is a warrior who is free. Not only that, but if left in her position, he would kill Yorm and flee. Hordaland, the name of which confused Askeladd as he thought it was a name of a region of land, says that she can never kill anyone, thinking it to be an awful idea. However, humoring Thorfinn, she wonders where she would even go, wondering if there really even is a place where she, a slave, could be free. Thorfinn then regales her about the tale of a land called Vinland. The night passes, and the war machine starts to churn once more as King Sweyn continues his invasion of England and Gainsborough. But they would end up challenging a beast unlike any other, Thorkel the Tall. On London Bridge, Thorkel, one of the most feared in the battlefield, is supporting the English in their defense of London. Seeing this as an opportunity, and because it's Thorkel, Askeladd sends Thorfinn to battle against the invincible Thorkel with one goal: bring back his head. However, while Thorfinn impresses Thorkel as someone with much promise, ultimately, the son of Thors is no match for the Danish Terminator, as he would be forced to flee, injured from the battle. Though, not before taking some of his fingers and regrouping with Askeladd to make their way to Wessex. As this happens, King Sweyn leaves behind his son, Prince Canute, to join his right-hand man, Ragnar, in the battlefield with the English. In other words, he done fucked it up. Not just because they're going to face off with Thorkel, and by the way, none of them stand a chance against him in the battlefield anyways, but also because they successfully raided the camp that Prince Canute is set up in, capturing the prince. While a massive mistake on King Sweyn's part, Askeladd is also delighted to hear this, because now he gets to play hero and recapture the taken prince, returning him to his father. However, things are never what they seem as they should be with Askeladd, as we will soon find out. Now with his hostages, Ragnar and Canute, Thorkel continues his unrelenting march to Swin's army to take advantage of the situation or simply kill them all. However, Thorkel, being a monstrous, bloodthirsty sentinel, decides to release Ragnar and Canute to the Danish soldiers because he knows they cannot win, especially when fighting Thorkel in close quarters. Though, Askeladd uses this as an opportunity to set fire to the forest, confusing both the Danish soldiers and the invincible Danish brute, allowing Thorfinn in the confusion to capture Ragnar and the young prince. Interestingly enough, however, Thorkel, realizing this, doesn't want his soldiers to fall to Thorfinn, as he knows he can probably just slaughter them all. So he simply opts to allow them to enact their plan. After all, it does not matter. Thorkel has plans for them. Now, with Prince Canute, Thorkel is in pursuit of the band of Vikings and is not relenting. So, Askeladd sends for reinforcements, but are then confronted by the commander of the Welsh army, Gratianus. And I'm sorry if I mispronounce any of these words, by the way, because I will. They now have their reinforcements, but as they continue their travel, they come across a river headed to Wales and arrive at Brychenog, I think is how you pronounce it. Tell me in the comments if I'm wrong. Which leaves them ambushed, but by who? Oh, the messengers of Brychenog. The leader of the group, Asser, speaks a different language that nobody but Askeladd understands. Calling their people Danish barbarians, nice racism, Askeladd, Asser refuses to remove his troops as he feels insulted by Askeladd's values. Nice, almost racism, but flirting pretty close, Asser. So Asser then plans to use Canute as a shield. Though, for Askeladd, this is all just an act, and he has a plan that he keeps hidden until the right moment. He then tells Canute to make a speech, say literally anything, to frighten the others and wound up the spirit of Askeladd's men. Instead, the cowardly and timid prince hides behind Ragnar, which the latter then suggests as he speaks for the prince, though Askeladd remains firm, saying it's Canute's moment to act, not Ragnar's. Eventually, now at Mercia, they decide to join the Danish in Gainsborough. Crossing northern Mercia, they experience the harsh cold climates of the area. But it must be done as Thorkel is still tracking them. This is where one of the most shocking moments in Season 1 comes when they stumble upon a village of Christians, one being a girl who stole a gold ring and is keeping it hidden for her sins. Sadly, Askeladd and his men find them and, well, they do what they do best. Pillage and murder everyone in the village, even the children, burying them in a mass grave. This was done to keep their secret from getting out. Though, as they arrive, the girl who stole the ring is at the hollowed out tree, toiling away with her ring as if it were a toy and kind of seeking forgiveness all at the same time. She is the only survivor, and the reason Thorkel is able to track down Askeladd much quicker. Thorkel now heading to Askeladd's direction, the English nobles are tired of war and are vying to accept a Danish warrior. While this is happening, English soldiers find Askeladd's men, though Askeladd has a plan. Wanting Canute to get over his ways and mature him much further, they go through with a plan to murder Ragnar in cold blood, pinning the blame on one of the English. However, Ragnar before his death reveals something truly horrifying. King Swin's plan to kill his own prince son, Canute. All in the name of politics and putting his older brother into power. Askeladd, on the other hand, starts to torture the captain of the English they just wiped out. He wants to know how they were able to find and track him down. Though, while this is happening, Thorkel's ever-looming presence interrupts him. Turns out that while this is happening, and with the fear of Thorkel approaching, Askeladd's men begin to plan a betrayal and mutiny of Askeladd. If you can't beat him, join him. And that's exactly what Askeladd's now former men begin to do. They want to join Thorkel's side. Though, it does not matter, as when the Danish Terminator arrives, he kills them all. As for the rest of Askeladd's men, as they make their way to a river to cut down a bridge to slow Thorkel's men, the rest of Askeladd's men begin to prepare a mutiny once more. However, Askeladd was prepared for this. As a child, Askeladd's mother became sickly, and thus they kept her in the barn with the cattle. She tells Askeladd as a young child of a land far away in which their ancestor, King Artorius, would return from and free them all saving them. As he recounts this tale, Askeladd reveals his deep-seated hatred for the Danish to his Danish soldiers and kills 2 of them almost immediately. Bjorn, now with Thorfinn, Canute, and the priest, are chased by Thorkel's warriors as Askeladd is left to deal with the rest of his former band of Vikings. Though while on the sleigh, they escape and eventually crash, and Thorfinn, not wanting anyone to kill Askeladd, gets on a horse to head back to defend him. The latter handles himself actually rather well, taking out much of his men, but is ultimately hit with a volley of arrows, crippling his movements. Thorkel then arrives. Good news, I guess, giving the last of Askeladd's men an option: die or die fighting, like warriors. Though, as Thorfinn arrives, he brings his attention to the young man instead. He wants a duel with Thorkel. Maybe not Thorfinn's best plan of action. As the 2 warriors battle, Canute has a dream in which Ragnar tells him that he loved him dearly and in some ways made a mistake for raising him as a son rather than a king. Canute disagrees as he enjoyed his time with Ragnar, though ultimately Askeladd was right. Now it is time for Canute to grow up, and his death will serve as an example to him. As he awakes, the drunken priest tells him Ragnar did none of that out of love, and then the 2 discuss the differences between love and discrimination. How man discriminates, but the nature and the world around them really does not. This allows Canute to awaken to his true self and face the current situation head on. His first test is the raging Bjorn, who, while under the influence of mushrooms, has just finished killing his former men, but in the process has lost his mind. He calms down Bjorn, but in the process, he has been mortally wounded. Thorfinn himself is dealing with the sheer power of Thorkel's strikes as his arm and ribs are broken, though knowing he will win this fight and wanting more allows Askeladd to treat his injuries nonetheless. This is when Thorkel reveals that he and Thors were commanders in the Jomsvikings, and Sigvaldi, the leader, was his older brother and gave Thorfinn's father his daughter, which would become his wife, Helga. Now that it's revealed that the 2 are actually family, the 2 continue their fight, but this time Thorfinn is able to gouge his eyes and knocks him out with a blow to the chin. Though, Thorkel's men are at the ready until it's Thorkel who stops them. Why? Because Thorfinn won the duel, fair and square. Though, something shocking happens. As Canute arrives, he tells Thorkel it matters not if they capture him, as he informs him that his father has already chosen his older brother, wanting him to get killed, ideally, in this battle. So he then declares that he will be fighting against the king of Gangsborough, which unites both Thorkel and Askeladd under one man, Prince Canute. Now, a unified force, they make their way to Gainsborough, and there they meet Floki and his army of Danes demanding to see King Sven. In the castle, Canute waits to see his father but are ambushed by King Sven, wanting his youngest dead. Though, Askeladd is able to convince King Sven that Canute was behind the victory in London. He ultimately decides to spare Canute, which then leads to an interesting scene where Gunnar, Ragnar's brother, goes to Canute to swear fealty and serve him just like his younger brother did. However, Askeladd is wizened and realizes he cannot be trusted. Though later on, Alti, the man who put a knife in Bjorn's back, tells him to leave and never to go raise a sword again. Ordered to go to York, Canute goes along with his band to a town called Northumbria Region. As they arrive, Canute is hit in the chest with an arrow. It's an assassination attempt. Though Thorfinn tracks him down and eventually kills the would-be assassin, he notices a familiar face, Leif Erikson. Trying to get Thorfinn to return home, Thorfinn is not interested in what Leif has to suggest, only his revenge. While this is happening, we learn that actually the person that was shot by an arrow was nobody, just a slave woman dressed as Canute, planned by Canute. Now, as they pass Floki, Askeladd tries to spread by word that there are people, enemies, who want Canute dead, and as well, misinformation to Gunnar. However, this is not the only issue that Askeladd is to deal with. Thorfinn, with a broken arm, now demands another duel. Though, what's surprising here is that Bjorn intervenes, and instead demands a duel with Askeladd. He is dying, and thus wants to duel Askeladd to go to Valhalla like a true warrior. Assuring that they are friends, Askeladd duels the wounded warrior and eventually kills him. Askeladd has just killed the only man he could ever call a friend, Bjorn. Though, Thorfinn, after this moment, still demands his duel, and he really gets it. boy, does he get it. Throwing away his sword, Thorfinn angrily attacks Askeladd, but instead, Askeladd once again beats the boy within an inch of his life. Askeladd has just taken out his feelings of Bjorn's death onto Thorfinn. Poor boy never stood a chance. As Canute stops the fight, Askeladd once again recalls his childhood, in particular of his mother and how she met Olaf as a slave woman, all because of Olaf's fighting skills impressing her. Though, much like Thorfinn wants to do, Askeladd eventually took revenge on Olaf for his treatment of his mother, smartly pinning it on someone else to escape the suspicion. This made Askeladd grow to hate the Vikings for their constant warring because his father fought for these ideals. Thorfinn, in the process, has learned nothing from Askeladd or his experience traveling with his band of Vikings. Thorfinn is the very embodiment of Olaf, his father, and thus, he hates that. Askeladd still supports Canute, however, because he is the most fit to rule, the most fit to be the king of the Vikings. However, on the flip side, King Sweyn tries to deal with the situation he's created about the assassination attempt on Canute's life. He praises not only Thorkel, but as well Canute while addressing elders of Denmark. He even gives Mercia, a very important part of England, to Canute as they plan to attack Ireland for revenge. In particular, what went down with King Harold and Brian Boru. Believing his plan is coming to fruition with Canute, he is shocked when King Sweyn announces his plans for Wales, as they want to snuff out any possible rebellion. As this is happening, Thorfinn, beaten and broken in jail, is visited by Leif Erikson, who begs him to come home to Iceland. Though, at the council, Floki once again manipulating the situation informs Sweyn of the way Askeladd feels about his opinions on Wales. Though, this shows that Askeladd has too much of a weakness for the Welsh people, in Sweyn's opinion. So, Askeladd tries to come up with some kind of plan to stop Sweyn, eventually telling Thorkel that his mother was Welsh and swearing to keep it a secret only to be called before King Sweyn. As he's rewarded by King Sweyn for his efforts, he asks the king about his orders to deal with Wales. He tries to convince Sweyn to not do it, as the country is poor and instead would rather broker peace. So Sweyn gives him two options: Wales or Canute. But if he chooses Wales, then he must kill Canute himself. While this is happening, Leif Erikson fails to convince Thorfinn to come home. Askeladd then denounces Sweyn and draws his blade, declaring Askeladd's real identity as Lucius Artorius Castus, the heir to Britannia. Askeladd then beheads Sweyn, and as Canute witnesses this act, realizes what's happening. Askeladd is protecting Canute, giving him a chance to do one thing: step forward, become a man, and kill Askeladd to submit his role as the king of the Vikings, by slaying the very heir to Britannia. As he goes to do this, Thorfinn witnesses Canute slaying Askeladd, which sends him into a flying rage as he tries to attack Canute, but is subdued, dragged away. Thorfinn is crushed, and as the blade falls, we recount the journey so far. Thorfinn is left in a state of denial as he spent all of these years fighting, seeking revenge only to have it taken away from him. Canute now assumes his new role as the king of the Viking army and the ruler of England. Askeladd has fallen. Now, the true story begins as the war arc is concluded, ending the prologue to Vinland Saga. If you enjoyed this video, on the left is a playlist of all of my Vinland Saga videos. On the right is a playlist of my best videos if you're new to the SeaTactics. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.